This video was brought to you in part by Moment. For the photographer looking to graduate into digital media format imagery, these two cameras, the GFX 50s Mark II and the GFX 100s, are arguably the first two worth considering, but they differ so much in application than their $2,000 price gap may lead you to believe. These two share identical bodies, and if it weren't for the subtle branding on the 50, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Let me take this one step further. You could look at two images from these respective cameras and likely not tell the difference. How do you choose? How do you decide which of these two cameras would serve as the right upgrade for your work? I've been shooting on the GFX system in some capacity over the last 4 years, and this year moved my professional work entirely to the GFX 100s. Shortly after this move, I got some extensive time with the 50s Mark II, which was pretty convenient because it allowed me to formulate a richer opinion on how these two stack up against each other. The decision on which of these cameras you should ultimately get comes down to the speed of your work over your patience. That is to say, the slower your subject matter is and the more patient you are as a creator, the more likely it is that the GFX 50s Mark II is a better investment for your work. Conversely, if you find that you shoot in a very dynamic way and your patience is closer to that of a prepubescent teenager, then the GFX 100s will make for a better creative tool. Now, I've already put the carrot before the horse here, so let's take a minute to cover some of the differences between these two cameras and then come back to finding out which might be the right one for you.
But God might be on vacation, and the promised land ain't never promised. My baby telling me to be patient, but the devil always working overnight, my darling.
The GFX 50s Mark II captures images at a little over 51 megapixels and the 100s captures them at 102 megapixels. And even though the sensors are the same physical dimensions because of the different technology being used, the 100s has a little bit more, a smidge more dynamic range, and the noise performance is almost identical, even though that 100s is being chopped up into more resolution. The 100s also has the unique ability to shoot 16-bit RAW files compared to the 14 on the 50s Mark II, and this may be important, so I'll talk about it at length in a few minutes. While both sensors share the same physical size and dimensions, the 50s2 has a half stop more stabilization than its big brother at 6.5 stops, but this may not be enough to tip the scales in any meaningful way. On top of the same physical body, it's nice that these cameras share the same 3.69 million dot OLED viewfinder and 3.2-inch LCD, even though I wish the LCD had a bit more resolution to it. And importantly, the cameras share the same 19 film simulations and color modes, which is great for users. Where the cameras really diverge is speed and video. The GFX 100s has a backside illuminated sensor with phase detect autofocus, whereas the 50s Mark II is not backside illuminated and sticks to a contrast-based focusing system. This first translates to the 100s being much faster at focusing and picking up the right subject, less time hunting and allowing you to just get more accurate shots, especially in lower light situations. Secondly, it also means that the 100s can record up to 4K 30p raw video even with a bevy of other video features, whereas the 50s Mark II can shoot no further than 1080p. Now, if I'm being completely honest, I don't see either of these being seriously considered for pro video work. Even on the 100s, let's be honest here, most people that are looking at this camera are considering it for photography first. And one last difference, and maybe the deciding factor for some, the Fujifilm GFX 50s Mark II comes in at $4,000 US, a full $2,000 less than GFX 100s, which means that you can get a body and a lens for less than the price of a 100s. And that might speak volumes to many creatives. Alright, so now we know the major differences between these cameras. So why would you take one over the other? Let's look at the GFX 100S first. This is a camera that once again has the same physical size sensor as the 50S Mark II, and even though it's being sliced up to produce twice the resolution, because of its backside illuminated technology, it maintains the same ISO range and just a little bit better dynamic range as well than the 50S Mark II. In a like-for-like technology situation, lower resolution sensors have better light gathering ability than higher resolution sensors, but the 50S2 has a 4-year-old sensor that doesn't employ the advancements of backside illumination. On top of this, the phase detect autofocus system is noticeably faster, especially when you opt into using things like face and eye detection. The technology in the 100S works as well as it would in something like the Fujifilm X-T4, where it's reliable in most situations, even though it might lag a little bit behind other brands in the camera space like Canon and Sony. Keep in mind though, this is still a massive medium format sensor that's 70% larger than full frame, so that performance is still phenomenal against the field. Lastly, let's go back to the bit depth. The GFX 100S can capture 16-bit RAW files, meaning that there's a considerable amount more color information per channel than the 50S Mark II. The thing to keep in mind here is that anything beyond 10-bit is pretty much unnoticeable to us by default. However, when you process these files, shift the colors and adjust curves, and you stretch and compress color channels, the difference between them can become more noticeable. So in simpler terms, the GFX 100S just gives you a higher ceiling, more room in your colors to push and pull in post to really get out your creative vision. Between the two, this is a camera to get if you shoot quickly, hope to shoot in changing environments, wish to further future-proof your photography, and even want to explore medium format videography. What the GFX 100S does is open up the bandwidth, this widening, if you will, for your creativity. If you're more of a maximizer than a satisfier when it comes to the tools you use, you'll gravitate to this camera because it gives you noticeably better performance that you may take advantage of through your creative journey. With that said, if you are fully aware and you know exactly what you plan on creating, you might come to the conclusion that the GFX 50S Mark II is plenty enough for your work. What the 50S Mark II lacks in speed and resolution is made up for in value. You have a camera here that can produce incredibly rich files, have access to fantastic GF glass, give you that medium format look, all while saving you $2,000, and that's a lot. To put this into perspective, you could buy a 50S Mark II, a lens, and a plane ticket to pretty much anywhere in the world for the price of one GFX 100S body. This is especially attractive if what you capture often finds itself in reliable light and doesn't move around a lot. Don't get me wrong, you can capture people and portraits no problem, but if your subject begins to shift rapidly, you have to switch to manual focus and learn that muscle. It's not impossible, but it demands practice. Now, if you move to landscapes, architecture, products, macro, and hell, even astrophotography, the 50S Mark II can be plenty and help you get into creating much sooner. When you're buying gear, it's easy to default to the better option, but you have to be willing to ask, better for whom? Don't blindly follow the spec sheets and file sizes. If you look at what you shoot, you may find yourself in a place where the GFX 50S Mark II is more than enough of a camera for your creative work. If you've watched my channel, you know the camera that I went with, and if you've seen my photography, it makes all the more sense. This year, more than ever before, I've let my work dictate my tools, and the GFX 100S has provided a healthy amount of space for me to explore my creativity. You'll see a bunch of content about this camera on this channel, so it's important for me to say that this is not the camera for everyone. And it's easier to say that when Fujifilm has been cranking out several options for people to consider. At the time of recording this, I'm wrapping up the 50S Mark II final review, and that camera has continued to impress me in how much it can bring to select creators. It makes strategic concessions that may make for great clickbait online, but at the end of the day, in the right hands, it can produce masterful images that propel your creativity forward. I've hammered this point a lot lately, but I'm going to say it again. Look at what you create, where you do it, and how often in a critical way, and you'll know exactly which of these two cameras is right for your journey. Now, before I wrap up this video, I gotta give a shout out to Moment, the sponsor of this video. They have been incredibly supportive of this channel, but more importantly, creators across the board. If you're looking to get creative gear, and most of you watching, turns out you're either in the US, UK, or Germany. Those are the top three, so shout out to you three for really showing up this last year. Back on subject, if you are looking to improve your gear, if you're looking to get some accessories, if you're looking, more importantly, for lessons, presets, and maybe even some get-togethers on Twitter Spaces. Moment, they're doing a bunch of great stuff for the creator community. So I'd encourage you to check them out. The link is in the description. They have been incredibly supportive once again to my journey, but also to many creators and sharing theirs. So if you haven't already, this is me once again telling you to go to shopmoment.com. The link is in the description. Check out what they have to offer because there might be something that'll help you move your creativity forward. We're coming to the end of 2021, and I've hinted at it before, but the new year is gonna bring some changes to the presentation and feel of videos on this channel. While I won't get into all the details here, I'll be taking a step back and producing a lot less content and focusing on more meaningful conversations that are richer in production, but also bold in how they are presented and the opinions that they might share. This is not bad news. In fact, it's great news because all of you watching and supporting this journey over the last 3 years, well, you've allowed me to grow as a creator and hit major milestones and make incredible partnerships. All of that has culminated into me having the luxury to produce less videos while over-investing on the quality of each one. Again, this is a good thing. Anyways, I'll talk more about this in future videos. I've used up my allotted time for this one. Let me know what you think in the comments below and we'll continue the conversation there. As always, my name is Gajan. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time.